guys, welcome back to Dwell Big. Today I want to cover what is, in my opinion, the top 10 essential RV upgrades and gear that you can do to your rig to help make your weekend warrior adventures as uneventful as physically possible. So, for us, there are really 4 categories we had to come up with to determine or to justify what gear or upgrades to do to our rig, because this stuff adds up really quickly. So if it doesn't fall into one of these categories, why are we buying it? Why are we installing it? Why are we doing it? So the 4 categories we came up with, and I'll put them up here on the screen, and we'll keep referencing these as we go through this top 10 list. But the number 1 is safety. Number 2 is efficiency, mostly talking about the setup and teardown time. Number 3 is going to be preventing maintenance and also preventing damage. And then lastly is just your overall experience. Does it improve your experience? This is normally talking about between setup and teardown, so when you're actually at camp. And it can also relate to your actual towing experience, getting to and from the campsite. So if it doesn't improve one of those 4 areas, we simply just can't justify buying it. And there's a lot of things that other people have on lists that I've had to pass on so far because I just can't see the benefit for it for us. Maybe that'll change in the future, but as of right now, this is my top 10 in no particular order, but I am saving the most important one for last. So please watch all the way through and check out that one. Without further ado, number 1 is the Furyon backup camera. This is also an observation camera, which is really the biggest reason we bought it versus the backing portion. But as far as the categories, this one checks off safety, efficiency, and potentially preventing damage. Safety while traveling with the observation aspect, also while backing. It improves efficiency because it can certainly help you back into your spot a lot more effectively and without as many attempts. And then obviously it can prevent damage because you may not back into something or possibly have an incident while actually traveling due to this. Most modern travel trailers and fifth wheels come pre-wired for this camera system. You can use other ones, but we use the one that was specifically pre-wired for. And you know, it does work as an observation camera as you're going down the road. It's a full wireless system with a little GPS-like unit that sits in your dash. Works rather well, and you know, it even has a mic and one-way audio capabilities. There are also options available from Furrion if your rig is not already pre-wired for one, so don't necessarily think that's out just because you're not pre-wired. Number 2 is one of the biggest on the list if you have a slide-out, and that is going to be a slide-out awning cover. This is something I never really thought about before upgrading to a travel trailer that has slide-out, and the biggest thing for us is in West Virginia camping, or in any place really where you're in wooded type of areas, especially with fall camping, you can end up with a lot of debris that lands on the top of your slide out. And you can't just run the slide out in as is. You have to get up there, find some way to blow it off, sweep it off, etc. So this one really checks off the preventing damage category. It really checks off the efficiency because you're not having to clean that off before tearing down. And then it's also safety because you're not having to actually climb up on a ladder, climb up on your roof to knock all that stuff off. It's also really huge because it lessens the potential for leaks. When you set up one of these awnings correctly, it hangs over, you know, a couple inches on each side of your slide. And for anybody concerned with potential water getting in or not fully trusting the seals around these slide outs, it's not going to 100% prevent water from hitting it, but it will really, really lessen the amount of water that it even hits those seals in the first place. Up next is a good weight distribution and sway control. I personally opted to go with the Andersen. I've done a video on that. You can check out all the reasons I opted to go that route. But you may not need one, but in the event that you do, just find a good one that matches your rig, matches your budget, matches all the above. It certainly helps in the categories of safety, experience, towing to and from your campsite, and then also you're potentially preventing damage. These will lessen sway when you're running on the interstate. They'll balance out the load and just make your overall ride substantially better and just overall more enjoyable and comfortable, and you're not going to have white knuckle experiences going camping. And again, for the whole weekend warrior aspect, you're just wanting to get out there and have fun, and this will make sure that you get from point A to point B safely and a lot more enjoyably. Up next is what are called X-Chocks. This is probably one of my personal favorites on this list, but these are really, really life-changing if you have a tandem axle or higher trailer. They certainly check off the safety and experience categories. And if you're not familiar with them, they go between your wheels, between the axles effectively, and they tighten up with the included wrench, and they truly work as chocks. You can effectively use them independently without the classic regular chocks, but they also serve a couple really important purposes. Number one is on the safety aspect. If you got one side of the rig up on leveling blocks, you can't really get regular traditional chocks under that side. And I've seen multiple times where people do not have that side chocked and they've only got the other side chocked. What this does is allows you to chock that side properly, even if you're up on whatever number of leveling blocks you have to be. The other one isn't so much safety, but it's more experience related, is it really prevents the back and forth rocking of the camper. No matter how tight you get the regular style chocks on both sides, there's still a little bit of movement allowed with the wheels. This really tightens it up and makes sure that those wheels can't really move or wiggle any whatsoever. So really it just makes your experience much better, and it makes sure that you are basically safely chocked in all kinds of chocking conditions. I often use them solely. Sometimes I'll throw a regular chock one just in case if it's a real steep angle or something, and they have just performed phenomenally well. Up next are what are just generically called leveling blocks. They have a lot of different uses, and when looking at the different uses, they effectively check off all four of the categories we're looking at. So the first in those uses is their namesake, which is for leveling. They're used for leveling the rig left to right. They are in roughly increments of about a ½ inch, and certainly allow for close enough left to right leveling. So you can stack up, they're basically like Legos for your rig. You can put them in different configurations, different heights, make effectively ramps to drive up onto, and you can pretty much level as much as you need to get your rig left and right level. They're also really, really, really handy for expanding the footprint of your stabilizer pads and your tongue jack. So if you're on anything less than like concrete, any kind of gravel or unstable kind of soil, instead of having your small pad for the stabilizer jack or the tongue jack, you can put one of these under there and really kind of spread out your footprint and allow that to give you a lot more stability for those. You can also stack them up so that you could and still put them under your stabilizers or your tongue jack so that you don't have to run those up or down nearly as far. Some additional uses is I've actually used them for sewer hose support. You can actually make a ramp out of them to run one of your tires up far enough on a tandem axle where it picks the other one up, so you can actually change your tire. I mean, the uses for these are just absolutely crazy. You can even make, like, if you are unlevel enough to where your stairs are kind of lifted, you can actually make an additional little step out of them to help get up into your steps, up into your camper a little bit easier. A ton of different uses for these things, guys. I mean, they are a really important piece of gear to add to your arsenal. At number 6 are the power stabilizers and tongue jack. Now, most units today are going to come with a power tongue jack, but if yours doesn't have one, it might be worth upgrading to that. The power stabilizers, they're pretty pricey and hard to upgrade. You might not be able to justify upgrading to those, but if you're looking at rigs now or will be in the future, I would personally suggest looking at ones that have power stabilizers. There's a few people out there that are against them for various reasons, but in my opinion, the efficiency is really hard to beat, and for the power stabilizers, I think when you look at the geometry and the way they're designed, I think they actually perform substantially better. I think they actually stabilize the camper left, right, front to back. I think they just do a much better job and are obviously way faster and easier to use. But the other big thing is it's less pieces you have to worry about. Most people carry a drill or an impact gun for the other style, but then you got to worry about having that and having a battery charged up. And if you don't, now you're hand cranking those things. And to me, again, sticking with our theme here of just getting out there as best you can, having fun. And if you're worried about the whole power aspect, all of these do have a manual override, and it's pretty much the same thing as, you know, if you did have the manual jacks at that point. So I think it's a pretty safe bet. Again, you probably can't necessarily, I wouldn't be able to justify upgrading these, but that was one thing I kind of decided I wanted on this current rig. The next few items here are kind of a combination of some smaller things that make up an overall upgrade or an overall improvement to a particular system. So first up are a few things that can upgrade your propane system. Number one is a set of gauges for your propane tanks. These simply just screw on, between the tank and the, outlet line for it on both sides, and it will show you very clearly, how much gas you have left, and it'll also indicate when it's about time to refill it or when it's actually empty. This is massive for somebody like me, the weekend warrior. I do not want to mess with guessing or assuming or taking the stupid tank off and doing the old weigh and check method. And for me, it's just massive to be able to pop that cover open real quick, look at both of them, see they're in the green, see I'm good to go, and just take off. And once they get low, I can refill them and handle it from there. So that is massive to me. To go along with that, just a cover to protect everything from UV, sun, road hazards overall. And I think overall just makes your rig look a little bit better. Most of them do come with a cover nowadays. You won't find the gauges very often, but a cover is becoming a standard thing. Lastly, again, this is one of those items that the cover and the gauges are really easy to add. This last item is not an easy, just snap on, swap in DIY thing, but adding a quick connect if you don't already have one. Somebody in plumbing, your RV dealer, etc. may be able to do this, but this was massive for me. And if you can't justify upgrading your rig, again, this is one of those things to maybe look at on your next one if you're buying one, currently looking to buy one. A quick connect really means that you no longer have to carry a separate propane tank, carry the small bottles, etc. It means your outside griddle, whatever it may be, could just plug right into that quick connect, use the propane from the front tanks, and substantially less gear, substantially less hassle, get you out there and going a lot faster, a lot easier. Now, all those together really check off all four of our categories: experience, efficiency, safety, and preventing damage. Coming in at number 8 would be a few things to upgrade your overall electrical system and experience with that, including a surge protector, a variety of adapters, and extension cords. All together, these will check off, safety, efficiency, experience, and preventing damage. You'll get all four out of this. And the way these all work together is, first of all, you have, now this is just a very cheap one, granted, but you have this surge protector. It has a couple of benefits to it, but first of all, it will directly and immediately indicate whether the circuit on the actual electrical pedestal is good or not. So you can plug this in without plugging your RV into it, flip the breaker. This will tell you right off the bat whether it's good to go or not. If it is, then you can start plugging in your electrical system and have peace of mind that at least it's wired up correctly. But this thing does offer some surge protection capabilities. It's not as good as the $300 ones out there, but for like a $40 Walmart special, it's good enough for me. Next would be a variety of adapters that ensures you are covering every possible scenario or situation. Ours is a 30 amp main input for the RV. In front of me you have a 30 amp female to 50 amp male, just in case 30 amps not available and you got to plug into a 50 amp. You also want to have one that goes down from a 30 to a 15, or whatever your rig input is. You want to have enough adapters to handle every possible situation you may run into. That's also what the extension cords are for. Sometimes the included or built-in power cable for your rig at certain parks may not reach the pedestal, but may be way in the back of the campsite, and you've got to have extension cords to get there. You don't want to have too much, but you want to have just enough to cover all of those. I have enough extension cords, enough adapters, but I have peace of mind that there is no scenario I'm going to run into where I'm not going to be able to get our electric hooked up correctly, have AC, and be able to fully enjoy my weekend and not have to worry about it. It also, is a safety potential fire issue. I mean, it really will just give you that overall peace of mind for the whole thing. So that is certainly a really important upgrade or set of upgrades to have in your arsenal of gear. Up next are 2 items for your city water connection that overall can prevent damage and just improve your overall experience. So, number 1 is this water pressure regulator. This is my personal favorite of the types, and I'll explain why in here in just a second. But the reason this is necessary is because you don't know what pressure the park has that you're connecting to, but you do know that your rig has a maximum of maybe up to 50 psi. This little guy here will limit it to 50 psi. The reason I like this one the most is there's absolutely nothing to worry about it. There's less to go wrong with it. And the other alternative option is one that has a gauge that shows you the park's pressure, and then it's adjustable for what pressure you want to go into your rig. Well, I don't care what the park's pressure is, and I'm only ever wanting to put the max of 50 into my rig. So this does just that, and I don't worry about a fragile gauge and adjustment and everything else. It's just a solid, nice brass fitting. I'm sure it can go bad eventually, but there's not much to go wrong with it, so I really like this one compared to the gauge style. Next is the bare minimum filter I would recommend. I'm not sure I would recommend, trusting your drinking water with this, but this will prevent sediment from getting into your system. So, sediment can build up in your hot water tank. It can wreak havoc on a lot of things in your system. So even if your pressure is good, you still really want to have this additionally. And, this is like what I would consider a level 1 filter. There are substantially higher for RVs that you can get that will bring your water to a point of literally being like a purified drinkable water. But I would at the minimum recommend having this to at least reduce that sediment and give you nice clean water through the system. Alright, that brings us to number 10, and as promised, this is without a doubt the absolute most critical piece of RV gear that you could possibly have in your arsenal of gear. Strange thing is, it is 100% free, 0 cost to you, and I guarantee that it will improve your safety, efficiency, experience, and it will prevent damage from now until as long as you're RVing. And that is a very clear, detailed checklist that you come up with everybody involved in your setting up and tearing down process. Sometimes you individually have different jobs with your husband, wife, family. You need to have a very detailed checklist in order of who does what, when they do it, etc., etc. And you need to treat it like a pilot using a pre-flight checklist. Because the moment you don't, the moment that item number 7 happens at item number 5 when it should have happened a couple steps later, is when inevitably something will go wrong. Somebody will get hurt, something will get damaged. Best case scenario, you really absolutely need to have this, and don't just look at it or skim through it. I mean, you should actually be literally checking off as you go. You can actually make a checklist on your iPhone and check each thing as you go down through there. And it is very much so recommended to do so. It will give you a peace of mind. It will make sure some of the mistakes that I have made do not happen. Now that I'm using a checklist, those things, I'm not going to say they can't happen, but they are substantially less likely to happen. I've pulled off before without taking my X-Chocks out. Luckily, I didn't damage them or the camper, but it could have been way worse. There's just been a variety of things I have done that I got lucky with that they didn't cause more issues, but you could easily cost some serious injuries, damage, etc. This will just give you such a better peace of mind to take 2 seconds to go through this list, make sure you're doing the things in order the way they should be done. And, you know, fast is slow in this industry, and slow is fast. Take your time, don't get in a rush, and just go through this checklist. I don't care if you think you're going to look like an idiot at the campground sitting there with a checklist. Did we do this? Did we do this yet? But I promise you, you're going to look a lot less like an idiot if, you know, you get set up correctly and have no incidents. Same with tearing down, etc. Hopefully you guys, you know, found something valuable in this today. If you did, please leave a like down below. If you have any of this gear, please feel free to put your experiences in the comments and verify or deny that it is a worthwhile gear or upgrade to do with your RV. If you have any major ones that I missed, now keep in mind, I personally like to see that they match at least one, if not multiples, of those 4 categories. There's been plenty that I have passed on because maybe for other people they do, but for me, I just can't justify them because they're not improving safety, efficiency, you know, etc. So please feel free to drop that down in the comments. If you disagree with anything you saw, feel free to drop that in. If you are interested in additional camping or just generic home content, please take a second to subscribe. There's going to be a lot more camper and overall home content to come in the future on this channel. So as always, guys, dwell big wherever you are. Thanks.